My name is Catherine Wright, and I've been working as a psychiatric emergency room nurse at Mercy General Hospital in Knoxville, Tennessee for 11 years. People often assume that working in a psych ER means dealing with violent patients or dramatic suicide attempts, and while those situations do happen, they aren't what stays with you. What stays with you is the 78-year-old woman named Eleanor Hartley, and what we discovered in her apartment after she was admitted to our unit. That case changed how I see every patient who walks through our doors, and I'm not sure that's entirely a bad thing. Mercy General is a 400-bed teaching hospital affiliated with the University of Tennessee. The psychiatric emergency department where I work is a secure 16-bed unit that serves as the primary mental health crisis center for Knox County and surrounding areas. We see approximately 6,000 patients annually, ranging from acute psychotic episodes to suicidal ideation to dementia-related behavioral disturbances. I work primarily the evening shift, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., when we typically see our highest volume of admissions. Psychiatric emergency nursing requires a specific skill set. You need to assess mental status quickly, de-escalate volatile situations, recognize medical emergencies masquerading as psychiatric symptoms, and most importantly, develop an instinct for when something doesn't quite add up. That instinct is what I want to talk about today. The evening of March 3rd, 2024, started like any other Saturday. I arrived for my shift at 2:45 p.m. and received handoff from the day shift charge nurse, Brian Kowalski. We had 12 patients in the unit and one bed open. The unit was relatively calm, which on a Saturday evening usually meant we were about to get busy. At 4:17 p.m., I received a call from our triage nurse, Denise Yu, informing me that EMS was bringing in an elderly female patient for psychiatric evaluation. The preliminary report was concerning but not unusual. 78-year-old woman, lives alone, found by her neighbor exhibiting bizarre behavior and making threats. The neighbor had called 911 after the patient appeared at her door at 3 a.m., claiming that someone was trying to steal her collection. The paramedics, a team I had worked with many times led by Calvin Brooks, wheeled in a small, delicate-looking elderly woman at 4:32 p.m. Eleanor Hartley stood maybe 5 feet 2 inches tall and couldn't have weighed more than 110 pounds. She had white hair pulled back in a neat bun, pale blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and was dressed in a floral print dress with a cardigan sweater. She looked like everyone's grandmother, the kind of woman who would bake cookies for church fundraisers. "Hello, Mrs. Hartley," I said, introducing myself as I helped transfer her to our examination bed. "I'm Catherine, and I'm going to be taking care of you this evening. Can you tell me how you're feeling?" She looked at me with those pale blue eyes and smiled warmly. "I'm feeling just fine, dear. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. My neighbor Gloria is a sweet woman, but she worries too much." Her speech was clear and articulate. Her affect was appropriate, friendly even. If I had passed her on the street, I would never have guessed she was being brought in for a psychiatric emergency. Calvin pulled me aside while my colleague, Tanya Foster, began taking vital signs. "Catherine, this one's a bit odd. The neighbor who called us was pretty shaken up. She said Mrs. Hartley was talking about protecting her family photographs and kept saying things like, 'They'll never take them from me, and I've worked too hard to let them go now.' When we arrived, Mrs. Hartley was completely calm and cooperative, but the neighbor insisted we bring her in, said her behavior has been getting increasingly strange over the past few months." "What kind of strange?" According to the neighbor, Mrs. Hartley has been going through her trash, asking detailed questions about her daily routine, and showing up at odd hours with gifts. The neighbor said it felt like she was being studied. I thanked Calvin and returned to my patient. I conducted the standard mental status examination, testing her orientation, memory, and cognitive function. She was oriented to person, place, and time. She could recall 3 objects after 5 minutes. She could perform serial sevens without error. By all objective measures, Eleanor Hartley's cognitive function was excellent for her age. Her vital signs were completely normal. Tanya noted that she had multiple small scars on her hands and forearms, which Eleanor explained away as accidents from gardening and cooking. The pattern was unusual. They were all roughly the same age, about 6 to 8 months old, with a peculiar uniformity that suggested they might not have been accidental. Dr. Alan Voss, the attending psychiatrist on duty that evening, came to evaluate her around 5:15 p.m. He spent about 40 minutes with Eleanor, conducting a thorough psychiatric evaluation. When he emerged from her room, he looked puzzled. "Her mental status exam is completely normal," he told me. "No evidence of psychosis, no delusional thinking, no cognitive impairment. She's oriented, her thought processes are logical and goal-directed. Honestly, if I had met her in any other context, I wouldn't suspect any psychiatric issues at all." "What about the neighbor's report?" "She denies all of it, says her neighbor is elderly and confused. I can't hold someone based solely on a third-party report when the patient presents as completely normal." "So what's the plan?" "I want to keep her for a few hours of observation. Something about this doesn't sit right with me, but I can't articulate what it is." At 6:30 p.m., I went to check on Eleanor. She was sitting in her bed, looking through her purse. When I entered, she quickly closed it, but not before I caught a glimpse of what appeared to be multiple photographs inside. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Hartley?" "I'm well, thank you. When do you think I'll be able to go home? I have some important tasks to attend to." "Dr. Voss would like to observe you for a few more hours. Is there anything you need? Family we can call?" "No family, dear. They've all passed on. It's just me now." She paused, then added with that warm grandmother smile, "But I have my photographs to keep me company. Would you like to see them?" In psychiatric nursing, when a patient volunteers information, you take the opportunity. It can provide valuable insight into their mental state. "I'd love to see them," I said, pulling up a chair beside her bed. Eleanor opened her purse and carefully extracted a small photo album. She opened it with the care of someone handling a precious artifact. The first photograph showed a middle-aged man in business casual attire standing in what looked like a parking lot. The photo had been taken from a distance, and the man didn't appear to be posing or even aware he was being photographed. "This is James," Eleanor said softly, running her finger over the plastic sleeve. "Such a kind man. Always held the door open for others. He worked at the bank downtown." She turned the page. The next photo showed a younger woman, maybe in her 30s, captured in profile as she walked down a street carrying shopping bags. "And this is Amy. Beautiful girl. She volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends. Such a generous heart." I felt a prickle of unease run down my spine. These didn't look like family photos or even photos of friends. They looked like surveillance photos, images captured without the subject's knowledge. "Are these relatives of yours?" I asked carefully. "Oh no, dear. These are my friends. I make it a point to collect photographs of people I meet. It helps me remember them." She continued turning pages, each one containing similar photos. Individuals captured in public spaces, none of them posing, many appearing to be unaware they were being photographed. There were at least 20 different people in the album. "Mrs. Hartley, how do you know these people?" "I meet them around town, dear. At the store, at the library, at church. I like to know people to understand them. Once I've gotten to know them well enough, I take their photograph from my collection." The way she said, "gotten to know them well enough," made my stomach tighten. There was something in her tone, a satisfaction, perhaps, that didn't match the innocent explanation. "And you've been collecting these photographs for a while?" "Oh yes, many years. I had to start a new album recently because my old ones were getting too full." She said this with pride, the way someone might talk about a successful hobby. I excused myself and immediately went to find Dr. Voss. When we returned to her room together, Eleanor was still looking through her photo album, a serene expression on her face. "Mr. Hartley," Dr. Voss said gently, "would you mind if I took a look at those photographs as well?" Eleanor hesitated for just a moment, then handed over the album. Dr. Voss examined each page carefully, his expression becoming increasingly concerned. "Can you tell me more about how you collect these photographs?" "Well, when I meet someone interesting, I like to learn about them. Their routines, their habits, where they like to go. Then, when the time is right, I take their photograph." "And what do you mean by when the time is right?" Eleanor's smile never wavered. "When I feel I truly know them. When I understand who they are at their core. That's when they're ready to join my collection." Dr. Voss and I exchanged glances. After leaving Eleanor's room, he picked up the phone and called the Knoxville Police Department non-emergency line. "This might be nothing," he said while waiting, "but something about this feels very wrong. The surveillance-style photos, the methodical nature of it all. It's triggering every alarm bell I have." Detective Lawrence Hayes arrived at the hospital within 45 minutes. He was a veteran investigator in his mid-50s who had worked with our Psych ER on numerous cases. Dr. Voss and I explained the situation, and Hayes asked to see the photographs. When Eleanor saw the detective, her expression changed for the first time. It wasn't dramatic, but there was a hardness that entered her eyes, a calculation that hadn't been visible before. "Mr. Hartley, I'm Detective Hayes with the Knoxville Police Department. Would you mind if I took a look at those photographs?" "Am I under arrest, Detective?" "No, ma'am. I'm just here to understand the situation better." Eleanor considered this for a long moment, then handed Hayes the photo album without a word. Hayes examined each photograph carefully, occasionally asking Eleanor questions. She answered readily, providing names, locations where she'd met them, details about their lives and routines. The level of detail was staggering. She knew where they worked, what time they left home, what kind of car they drove, who their friends were. "Mr. Hartley, this is quite a lot of specific information. How long have you been collecting these photographs?" "Several years, Detective. Is there a law against taking photographs of people in public places?" She was right. In public spaces, taking photographs wasn't illegal in itself, but the systematic nature of it was deeply concerning. "Mr. Hartley, I'm going to need to verify some information. Would it be all right if I held on to this album for now?" For the first time, Eleanor's composure cracked slightly. Her hand moved toward the album, then stopped. "Those are very important to me, Detective. I'd prefer to keep them." "I understand, but I need to look into this a bit further." After a tense moment, Eleanor nodded slowly. "Very well, but I'll want them back." Hayes left with the photo album. Dr. Voss decided to place Eleanor on an involuntary 72-hour psychiatric hold, citing concerns about potential danger to others. Eleanor didn't protest, which in itself was unusual. Her acceptance felt calculated, as if she were biding her time. Detective Hayes returned to the hospital at 10:45 p.m., just as my shift was ending. His expression was grim. "Catherine, I need to speak with you and Dr. Voss." We gathered in the consultation room. Hayes spread several photographs on the table. I ran the names she gave me through our database. 3 of the people in these photos are listed as missing persons. He pointed to the photo of James. James Whitmore, 52, reported missing November 8, 2023. Last seen leaving work at First Community Bank. He moved to another photo. Amy Delacroix, 31, reported missing February 2, 2024. Last seen leaving the animal shelter where she volunteered. My blood ran cold. You think she had something to do with their disappearances? I don't know yet. But we need to search her residence immediately. We'll go in first thing tomorrow morning with a warrant. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about Eleanor's serene expression as she showed me those photographs, the pride in her voice as she described her collection. The next morning, I wasn't scheduled to work, but I couldn't stay away. Detective Hayes called at 11:47 a.m. Dr. Voss put him on speakerphone so I could hear. "I've been in law enforcement for 27 years, Hayes began, his voice strained, "and I have never seen anything like this. Mr. Hartley lives in a small 2-bedroom apartment. When we searched it, we found 17 photo albums. 17. Each one contains between 20 and 30 photographs. We're talking about more than 400 individual people photographed without their knowledge over at least a decade." "My God," Dr. Voss whispered. But that's not the worst of it. In her second bedroom, she had set up what I can only describe as a shrine. The walls are covered with photographs, and beneath each one, she had written dates and notes. "What kind of notes?" I asked. "Details about the people, their routines, their vulnerabilities, and in some cases, a final entry that says completed with a date. We've cross-referenced 6 of the photographs marked completed with missing persons cases and unsolved deaths in Tennessee over the past 8 years. Catherine, we think she's been killing people." The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of Dr. Voss's desk. "How?" "We found substances in her kitchen that we're analyzing now. Based on preliminary tests, we believe she's been using various poisons. The forensic team also found personal items belonging to several missing persons. Jewelry, wallets, driver's licenses. She kept trophies." "The photographs were trophies," I said. "She befriended these people, learned everything about them, and then killed them and kept their photographs. That's what we believe. She would befriend victims over weeks or months, gain their trust, then poison them, most likely by bringing them food or drinks as gifts. The poisons were slow-acting, so deaths would appear natural. Many victims were people who lived alone or had limited social connections." After Hayes hung up, Dr. Voss and I sat in silence. "I looked at those photographs with her," I finally said. "She was so calm, so proud." "She's likely a serial killer with significant psychopathic traits," Dr. Voss said quietly. "The methodical stalking, the lack of empathy, the trophy-keeping, it all fits. But Catherine, you recognized that something was wrong, and you escalated appropriately." Over the following weeks, Eleanor agreed to speak with investigators without a lawyer. Her interviews revealed a chilling psychology. She claimed she wasn't killing people, she was preserving them. According to Eleanor, everyone has a moment when they are their truest self. Her mission was to identify that moment and capture it. The stalking, the note-taking, the photographs, all of it was in service of this goal. When she felt she truly understood someone, she would introduce poison through food or drink gifts. She preferred slow-acting poisons that would cause death in their own home because she believed this allowed them to die as their authentic selves. After their deaths, she would display their photographs as a gallery. She showed no remorse. She expressed pride in her work. She had been careful, methodical, and successful for nearly a decade. She had chosen victims unlikely to be immediately missed, people who lived alone, who had limited family connections. She had varied her methods so individual deaths didn't raise patterns. The psychiatric evaluation diagnosed her with antisocial personality disorder with psychopathic features. She was found competent to stand trial. As investigators worked through Eleanor's collection, the scope expanded dramatically. The Knoxville police partnered with the FBI to cross-reference her victims with unsolved cases. By the end of April 2024, investigators had linked Eleanor to 12 confirmed homicides spanning from 2015 to 2024. The victims ranged in age from 27 to 68. 6 were male, 6 were female. The only common factors were limited family connections and deaths that appeared natural. What made the case particularly challenging was that many victims had been cremated, eliminating the possibility of exhuming bodies for forensic evidence. Eleanor had been aware of this and had specifically targeted people who had chosen cremation. But investigators discovered another disturbing element. Alongside the photographs marked "completed" were dozens of photos of people still alive. These were people Eleanor had been studying, potential future victims. Detective Hayes personally contacted each individual to warn them. One of those people was Gloria Fletcher, Eleanor's neighbor, the woman who had called 911. Gloria had been right to be frightened. In Eleanor's notes, she had written extensive observations about Gloria's habits and vulnerabilities. She had written that Gloria was nearly ready and had scheduled a completion date for mid-March 2024, just 2 weeks after Eleanor's arrest. Gloria had been days away from becoming victim number 13. Eleanor Hartley's trial began in September 2024. I was called to testify about her presentation at the hospital. Sitting in that courtroom, looking at Eleanor, I was struck by how ordinary she appeared. She could have been anyone's grandmother. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: the photographs, the detailed notes, the poison-making materials, the personal effects from victims. Eleanor's own statements, in which she calmly explained her methodology, were played for the jury. Her defense argued diminished capacity due to mental illness, but the prosecution countered that her careful planning and decade-long success demonstrated clear knowledge of right and wrong. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before finding her guilty on all 12 counts of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to 12 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. During sentencing, family members of Eleanor's victims spoke about their pain, the years of not knowing, the trauma of discovering the truth. Eleanor showed no emotion throughout. When given the opportunity to address the court, she declined. Even now, 8 months after Eleanor's arrest, investigators are still working to identify all potential victims. Of the more than 400 people in her collection, they've identified and located approximately 300 who are alive, but that leaves nearly 100 unidentified photographs. Some may be people Eleanor photographed but never targeted. Some may be victims whose deaths were never reported as suspicious. Some may be people who disappeared without anyone reporting them missing. Individuals so isolated that their absence went unnoticed. The FBI created a database with these unidentified photographs and made it available to law enforcement nationwide. They're hoping someone will recognize a face and provide identification. Detective Hayes told me they believe Eleanor's collection represents at least 20 actual murders, possibly more, but they may never know the full extent. I still work in the psychiatric ER at Mercy General. I haven't left, though I seriously considered it in the weeks after Eleanor's arrest. What stopped me was something Dr. Voss said during one of our debriefing sessions. "Catherine, you did exactly what we're trained to do. You noticed something was off, you investigated appropriately, and you escalated when necessary. That's the job. We can't always prevent terrible things from happening, but we can respond appropriately when we encounter them." He was right, of course, but it changed me nonetheless. I don't look at elderly patients the same way anymore. When a pleasant grandmother type comes through our doors, I'm more vigilant now, more attuned to inconsistencies. Some of my colleagues think I've become paranoid, but I prefer to think of it as appropriately cautious. I started having nightmares about 3 weeks after her arrest. In the dreams, I would be looking through her photo albums, but the faces would be people I knew, my family, friends, colleagues. I sought therapy, which helped. My therapist helped me understand that Eleanor Hartley was an extreme outlier, that I couldn't let one case destroy my ability to connect with patients. But the truth is, it did change my ability to connect. Not destroy it, but change it. I'm more guarded now, more analytical. I look for patterns where before I might have accepted surface presentations. Whether that makes me a better nurse or just a more suspicious one, I'm still figuring out. Here's what haunts me. Eleanor Hartley wasn't unique. In the months following her arrest, as the case received national attention, Detective Hayes began receiving calls from law enforcement in other states about similar cases. In Tampa, investigators had found a 71-year-old man who had kept detailed journals about his neighbors for 20 years. In Louisville, An 82-year-old woman had been arrested for attempting to poison a fellow resident at her assisted living facility. When police searched her previous residence, they found photographs of dozens of people, along with notes describing their vulnerabilities. The FBI has quietly begun studying what they're calling geriatric predatory behavior, serial offenders who begin or continue their crimes in old age. These individuals often avoid detection because they don't fit our stereotypes of what a predator looks like. We expect danger from young men, from people who look threatening. We don't expect it from grandmothers in floral dresses. Eleanor operated successfully for at least a decade because no one suspected that a frail, elderly woman could be capable of such methodical violence. She hid in plain sight, protected by our own assumptions. How many others are out there, I wonder? How many other elderly people with their photo collections and careful observations? How many deaths attributed to natural causes were actually murders by killers who knew their age would shield them from suspicion? I'm sharing this because I think it's important for people to understand what happened. Not just the sensational aspects, but the deeper truth about how predators can hide in plain sight. If you work in healthcare, law enforcement, or any field where you interact with vulnerable populations, remember Eleanor Hartley. Remember that predators don't always look like predators. Remember that charm and cooperation can be manipulation. Remember that sometimes the most dangerous patients are the ones who present as completely normal. And if you're reading this as a general member of the public, think about the isolated people in your community, the ones who live alone, who have limited family connections, who might not be missed immediately if they disappeared. These are the people Eleanor targeted. Check on your neighbors. Maintain connections with elderly friends and relatives. Be aware of people who seem overly interested in your routines. Trust your instincts if something feels off. Eleanor Hartley is in prison now, where she will remain for the rest of her life. But I think about those 100 unidentified faces in her photographs. I think about the possibility of other Eleanors out there, building their collections. And I think about Gloria Fletcher, who trusted her instincts enough to call 911 when something felt wrong, even though Eleanor seemed like a perfectly nice old lady. Gloria's intuition saved her life and potentially many others. Sometimes the darkest horrors don't announce themselves with violence. Sometimes they come wearing a cardigan sweater and offering you homemade cookies, asking polite questions about your life, taking your photograph for their collection. I'm still a psychiatric ER nurse. I still show up for my shifts, still assess patients, still try to help people in crisis. But I'm different now, more aware, more vigilant. And maybe, in this line of work, that's not such a bad thing. Because sometimes the most important thing we can do is listen to that small voice that says something isn't right, even when we can't articulate exactly what's wrong. Trust it. That instinct is there for a reason.